Right, today we are going to talk about the basic structure of eyeball. We'll start with a very basic concept, as if you don't know anything about eyeball except that you know eyeballs are in the sockets of the orbits. Right? Let's remove one eyeball from the orbit and put it here and study every part of the eyeball one by one. Right? First we'll talk about the general concept, and then every part of the eyeball will be discussed into detail. If I put an eyeball here, first of all we'll discuss its outer layer. One of the best way to study the eyeball is that we must know what are the walls of eyeball, right? What are the walls of eyeball, and what are the structures inside it. That's so simple. What are the walls of the eyeball and what are the structures inside? So first we'll start studying the walls of the eyeball, right? When we talk about the wall of the eyeball, it has three layers. It has three components. The outermost layer of the eyeball is the protective layer. Outermost layer is the protective layer, and this protective layer consists of two important components. Number one is the sclera, the white of the eyeball. Sclera, and other two is this interior most part of the outer layer. This is cornea, which is basically transparent. Right? Again, we are studying the structure of eyeball. First we'll talk about the wall of the eyeball and then content of the eyeball. First of all, I told you there are three layers of the eyeball. The outermost layer, here I have drawn only the outermost layer of the eyeball, which is the protective layer. It protects the very delicate structure inside, right? This from here, right? From here up to here, you start from here, all this layer, this is called sclera. It's a very tough membrane, sclera. And here is the transparent part, and this transparent part is called cornea. So this is the outermost layer. Inside it, there is a highly vascular layer, right, which brings the nutrition here. And this highly vascular layer, which is inside the outermost protective layer, and this layer is called also uveal tract, right? Now this vascular layer has one posterior part, right, and this posterior part which I've drawn here, this is called choroid. What is it called? Choroid. And then there is one part, as you move from choroid forward, a part of the middle layer, it becomes thickened, and this thickened part is called ciliary body. It is called ciliary body. And in the middle of ciliary body there is another vascular diaphragm, and this is called iris. Again, first I made the drawing of the outermost part, and outermost part was, what is this? Outermost part, this was basically, let me tell you, outer coat of the eyeball. Outer coat of eyeball, right? And this outer coat of the eyeball, it had two components. This part, posterior 5/6 of the eyeball, this structure, this is tough membrane and opaque membrane, and this is sclera. Right? Then this interior part, interior 1/5 of the eyeball, right, interior most area, which is part of a smaller circle, right, this is basically transparent, and we call this part of the outermost layer cornea, right? This is outermost layer. Then I came to the middle layer. There is middle layer, and this middle layer or middle coat of the eyeball or middle layer of the eyeball, we can call it middle coat also, right? Middle coat. This is basically also called vascular coat, nutritive coat, right? This was outermost coat and protective coat. This was protective cover, and this is the nutritive or vascular coat, right? So this is middle layer is equal to vascular coat, and its posterior most area, this area, right, this posterior area, this is called choroid. This area is called choroid. And interior to the choroid, there is a triangular, relatively enlarged area, vascular layer, and this enlarged area, right, as you move the choroid forward, right, interiorly, this vascular layer becomes thickened. And this thickened triangular area, this is called ciliary body. We'll discuss every part in detail. First, we just make the basic structure, ciliary body. And from the ciliary body, the interior-most area, there is a vascular, right, layer extend as a diaphragm with a central hole. The central hole is pupil, and this diaphragm is called iris. It is called iris. So we can say that middle layer consists of choroid, yes, choroid, and ciliary body. Ciliary body is actually, here you see only two parts, but actually it's a thickened circle. Is that right? And here is the, what is this? Iris, right? With a central hole here. If you make, the iris will be somewhat like this, right? This is the iris. Okay. Then, okay, I will keep it simple because later on I'll draw the detailed diagrams. So this is your iris, right? Then the inner layer, the innermost layer, the real layer for which this protection is provided, the real layer for which this vascular, heavy vascular nutrition is provided, that is the sensory layer of the eyeball. That is the retina, which is really going to do the real function of the eye. And retina is inside, right? Now retina is the structure here, innermost layer, and here I draw the retina, and retina, yes. Now retina, as you know, that retina has the most important sensory component here called rod and cones, which are sensitive to the light, right? Now, from the retina, these are the nerve fibers going. Now, this retina, which I have made it here, right? This is the sensory layer. This sensory layer, right? Again, if I want to be more clear, retina is basically two layers. An outer layer, this black layer, and this is the pigmented layer, okay? This one is pigmented. If I enlarge it, if I enlarge structures here, what is this structure? This is sclera. Inside it, what is this structure? This is choroid or vascular layer. I'm making a structure from here. I have enlarged it. This is sclera. Inside it, there's vascular layer. Inside here, this is your retinal layer, right? But what I really want to tell you is that retinal layer consists of two parts. One part is this one, the outer part, which is basically heavily pigmented cells. We also call it pigmented layer of retina. And this layer, pigmented layer of retina, is in very intimate and strong relationship with the vascular layer. Is that right?
Yes.
And this layer, which is from here up to here, this is called neural layer. What is it? Neural layer. And outer was pigment layer. And both layers are part of retina. Is that right? So we can say, again I will make pigment layer black so you don't confuse. Retina has one pigment layer, right? Heavily pigmented. Why? Because when light goes in, it should get absorbed and not get reflected from different angles, so that image should not be distorted, right? So retina has outer layer, this layer, I will draw it here, this layer, and this layer is the outer layer of retina, and this is pigment layer, right? An inner layer of retina, this blue one, right? This is basically which layer? This inner layer is that part of the retina which is also called neural part of retina. Is that right? Rather, these are two parts of the retina. Clear? Two layers of the retina. Now, actually, this outer part of retina, the pigment layer, right, does not have rods and cones. Does not have rods and cones. Actually, this is the neural layer here. This one. It has the rods and cones. These rods and cones, as I will discuss later into detail, these are the structures which convert the electromagnetic waves energy. You know, light is electromagnetic energy. These rod and cones are very special type of transducers. What are transducers? Transducers are those structures which convert one type of energy into another type of energy. You know, light is a form of energy. Electromagnetic waves. When electromagnetic waves fall on the rod and cone, which I will discuss into detail later, when electromagnetic waves or the light fall on the rod and cones are activated and they produce action potentials. They convert the electromagnetic energy into electrochemical energy of action potential, right? And those action potential through multiple cells will go to the central nervous system. You're understanding? So actually, these rod and cones are actually part of the neural layer, right? And these rod and cones are also called light receptors. They are also called light receptors, which are stuck into what is this layer? Pigmented layer. So that when light comes, it passes through all layers of retina, activate the rod and cones, and then get absorbed into dark layer. Even though choroid also has a little bit pigmentation, that we will discuss later. Is that right? Now, this innermost layer, rod and cones are, first of all, its pigment layer continues all over the choroid, and this pigment layer continues behind the sclera, and this also continues behind the iris. Pigment layer of the retina, right? This is pigment layer of the retina, continuing, covering all the choroid, then extending forward on, what is the structure? Ciliary body, and then extending further forward behind the iris. Is that right? Now, a point which is very important. Even though pigmented layer start from this area is optic disc. From here it starts and it continues. It's all over the choroid. It's all over the behind the or inner side of the ciliary body and inner side of the iris. But rod and cones do not extend up to this area. They do not extend. Rod and cones, let me draw a structure here. Okay. This is the corneal area. Is that right? And this is corneoscleral junction. Cornea with sclera. This is corneoscleral junction. This point and this point. And this is the corneal section. Actually, rod and cone extend from backward, forward, somewhere in the middle of between these 2 points. These are rod and cones. They reach up to here. But the pigment layer of this continues forward, right behind the choroid and also. So what does it mean? That rod and cones, if I make it here the corneal part and here I make it corneoscleral junction, right? Rod and cones continue somewhere in here and here up to here. And beyond that, only pigmented layer continue and very thin part of the neural layer continues. Very thin part of neural part of retina continues. But rod and cones are not continuing forward. Now the point where rod and cones terminate here, right? It means ahead to this, forward of this, retina is not sensitive to light. Is not sensitive to light. So is this part where the rod and cones are present, only retina is sensitive here to the light stimuli. Am I clear? Any question up to this? So I will briefly review the basic structure of eyeball. Up to now what we have discussed, we have mainly discussed the, you can say, core outer, we have discussed the coats of eyeballs, or we have discussed the walls of the eyeball. Yet we have not talked about the content of the eyeball. What did we discuss? Outermost layer is the protective layer. Outermost layer is the protective layer, and this protective layer, behind it is sclera, which is opaque, and in front, interior 1/3 of the eyeball, this is cornea, which is transparent, right? The middle layer is vascular layer, and vascular layer behind it is choroid, right? And as it continues interiorly, it becomes widened and it becomes more thick and triangular, and this thickened part of the vascular layer is called ciliary body. And then from the ciliary body, centrally, more interiorly, right, a diaphragm is there with central aperture, and this diaphragm is called iris. So outer layer has sclera and cornea, middle layer has choroid, ciliary body and iris, and innermost layer is having what? Yes, innermost layer or coat, right, or coat, that is called what? Retina. That is called retina. And this retina basically has two part of the retina, which, first of all, retina has itself two layers. Number one, what is there? One is pigment layer, which is outward, pigmented cell layer, pigmented part, right? And then there is neural part, right? Or we can say photo light sensitive part. That is a more appropriate concept. We can say light sensitive part, which is containing rods and cones. And what did I say? That light sensitive part was present from back, it extends over the choroid, but somewhere middle of between the, what is this point? Corneoscleral junction and cornal equator, cornal section, somewhere it rod and cones terminate. But pigment layer with little neuronal tissue continues forward behind the ciliary body and the iris. These are the basic three layers. Now, purpose of outermost layer was to protect the retina, and to let the light enter in the eyeball from the interiormost part of cornea. Middle layer purpose was to provide a huge supply of, yes, blood supply, nutrition to the rods and cones. Yes. They consume a lot of energy because they convert the light energy into electrochemical energy of action potentials. Yes. Is that right? So vascular layer is there, and then of course this diaphragm is very important because it controls, pupil can become wider or smaller, so it controls how much light is admitted in different circumstances inside the eyeball. Then the real sensory layer of the eyeball inside. Now after this, now some other important structure. Here is your lens. What is this? Lens. This is your lens. Lens is, you know, it's a transparent disc which lets the light pass and help the light to focus properly on the retina. And lens has special ligaments which are attached with the ciliary body, and it is held in position, right, with the ciliary. Okay, let me make the lens. Yeah, lens at the periphery has special ligaments, or we call them these elastic fibers, which hold the lens into position and adjust the lens focal power. These are called suspensory ligament or zonules, right? You suspend the periphery of the lens attached with the, what is this? Ciliary body, right? Behind the lens, posterior to the lens, what is there? There is special type of fluid-like, jelly-like material, gel-like material, and this gel-like material which fills the remaining part of the eyeball. This gel-like material which fills it here. This is called aqueous, no, it is called vitreous humour. What is it called? Vitreous humour or vitreous body. Its name is vitreous body or vitreous humour.
Yes.
Is that right? So inside, when we talk about structures inside, here it is vitreous body, and then there is lens, and then there is a fluid here, right, which is filling this area, right, and this is called aqueous humour. So when light, I will go into detailed structure of this area. So what really happens when light is entering, first it has to pass through cornea, then through the aqueous humour and pupil, and aqueous humour, then through the lens, then through the vitreous humour, and then it falls on the retina and stimulate rod and cones, and eventually light information is converted into action potentials, which goes out of the eyeball through the optic nerve to the central nervous system. Am I clear? Now I will draw the eyeball structure rapidly, and you will tell me which component I'm drawing. So I check really you understand the basic structure. If you really understand, I will go to a little more detail of structures. Yes, now I'm drawing, what is this layer? Outermost, innermost? It is outermost, and this part of the outermost layer is called sclera, and this interiormost part is called cornea, right? There is sclera and there is cornea. Okay, that's good. Then inside it, I'm drawing rapidly. What is this structure up to here and up to here? No, yes, it is choroid. It is choroid. And here if I draw this part of the choroid, when choroid interiorly is a, yes, vascular layer become thickened. What is this? Ciliary body. And now, what is it?
Iris.
Very good. Iris. Right, this is iris. And what was it? Choroid. Right, it was middle vascular layer, choroid, ciliary body, and iris. I'm just repeating it to see you really remember or not. And what is the structure here? Oh, first the innermost sensory layer. Yes, it was the pigment layer of retina, which continues behind, inside the choroid, and then behind the ciliary body, and even on the back of iris. And what is this layer? You terminate here. What is this? Light sensitive part of the retina, which is having rods and cones, right? And here is your beloved lens, right? And what are these ligaments? Which suspensory ligaments, right? And here is your, yes, vitreous humour, right, which fills this area. This is a very basic structure of eyeball. That's it. Very basic structure of eyeball.